Great. What are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about Power BI performance. A lot of you guys will probably might have faced some very slow Power BI reports that you literally have to wait for a decent amount of time, or even some Power BI report development that takes a little bit longer than you initially expected. All of those things will be tackled within this presentation. I'll give you guys approximately 10. You will see at the end of the presentation, it won't be exactly 10, but I think there will be about 8 or 9 different performance tips to speed up your Power BI reports. My name is Lou Segers. I'm a Microsoft Analytics consultant at Belgium's Lytics. I'm also blogging at my own personal blog, which is called www.thedatatrain.be. If you have any questions whatsoever, you can always reach me on my company email, which is also visible on the screen. Please do get in touch on Twitter. I try to be as active as possible on Twitter and LinkedIn, so please make sure to connect with me if you like some Power BI content. Great. Having said all of that, what are we going to talk about today? Let's turn those slow steam locomotives into streamlined high-speed trains. The course progress of today, 3 different topics that we will be discussing. The first part is about report best practices. Next, I'll be talking about how you can resolve your slow dataset refreshes yourself. And thirdly, very important topic as well, of course, how can you evaluate performance? How can you see actually the difference of all the things that you adjust to, on your Power BI report? Great. Let's immediately dive into it. First tip that I can give you guys is only keep necessary visuals. Try to overthink every shape that you're adding, every single piece that you're adding to your Power BI report. Every single piece needs rendering time, so it will slow your Power BI report for every single shape that you add. The tip that I can give you guys here is try to use backgrounds. I try to make it as practical as possible, so I have some demo material ready, and I try to show most of the things that I'm explaining within Power BI Desktop itself to make it very practical. Okay, so this is Power BI Desktop. What do we have over here? We have a very straightforward model. So we have connected to Microsoft's AdventureWorks database. We have loaded in some dimension and effect. So let me quickly head over to the data model. It's pretty straightforward. To make you a little bit familiar with the model, we have one fact table and we have several dimensions right around it. We have a dim customer, dim product, we have a dim sales territory, we have a date dimension, and of course a subcategory and a product subcategory. So a pretty straightforward model. Great. We have some visualizations already prepared on this first page. What people tend to do then, they want to actually beautify it. They want to add all kinds of shapes to their report just to make it as appealing as possible. What do? They add a specific shape over here. They put it in a specific color. They also change, of course, the layer order. So send it to back, for example, in this case. And this way, they try to beautify it. But once again, every single piece that you add to your Power BI report, it takes up rendering time. It makes your report a little bit slower. So try to create your own backgrounds. You can just simply navigate to the format page over here. From the February release of Power BI Desktop, this is, by the way, default. So it's the new formatting pane. If you browse for a specific background, you can just simply select it, and all of those shapes will be already on the screen on your background, and they don't need any rendering time whatsoever. So it's a very easy thing to do, but please do take this into account. Great. Heading over to the presentation once again. So only keep necessary visuals. The second thing that I would like to show you guys is try to stick as much as possible to default visuals. Only go to the marketplace as a last resort. Why? Those visuals that aren't standardized by Microsoft, in most of the cases, they aren't checked for performance. They aren't the best performing ones. So try to avoid them as much as possible. But of course, in some situations, it might come in handy to explore the marketplace for new visuals as well. Okay, great. Next in line, avoiding both directional relationships. This, in my eyes, is the #1 performance killer. Always try to avoid this kind of relationships. Why? Every single time, on every single interaction that you make, you set a specific filter on your report. It needs to push this filter to all the other tables that are linked to this specific table. If you have a both directional relationship, then whether or not you are filtering the dimension or the fact, in this example, the location table or the fact table, in every single situation, both tables will be filtering each other, and that, of course, needs some additional resources. It's a real performance killer if you don't need a both directional relationship to enable this. Great. Alternatives for this one is a cross filter function and the count rows filter. So you can use DAX to only enable or to change the specification from a relationship to both directional for the runtime for a specific measure only. So that, of course, is a very good alternative. Okay. Third one is base measures. In my eyes, this is the most interesting part, the most efficient part of Power BI development. Okay, what would I like to show you guys now is, first of all, base measures. Base measures, this is simply a definition of a measure, the simplest way you can represent a measure. So it is a column value without any business logic whatsoever. It's a sum, it's a max, it's a minimum, it's an average, all kinds of this. So just the simplest aggregation of one of your column values. This is called a base measure. Why would you use base measures? Well, if you are starting to build other measures up on top of this specific measure, and you need to change something on all of those measures, you can just simply do it on the base measure itself, and it will be automatically pushed to all the other measures as well. Great. Let me quickly head over to our demo environment once again. So what I would like to show you guys now is how you can make use of Tabular Editor. Tabular Editor is it's free to use. Tabular Editor 2. There is a commercial version as well. It's called Tabular Editor 3, but the second version is free, totally open source, and it can speed up your report development significantly. Great. What do we have over here? We have a matrix for 3 different calendar years. We have a specific sales amount. Okay, the sales amount is located in the fact internet sales. It's located over here. What do most people do? They navigate over here. They create a new measure. Okay, they have to wait for Power BI to load up the new measure definition box, and they're going to write, for example, a sum of sales amount. The DAX measure that they will need, they're going to aggregate the sales amount with the sum DAX function. Okay, great. This is what most people are doing. We already spent about 30 seconds. Great. You can just simply edit to the matrix as well. Next in line, what do people do? Okay, this isn't the right format. I'm going to change the format, the euro sign. I'm living in Belgium. The euro sign needs to be in front of my specific measure, which should be the one over here. Perfect. Okay, then also they don't need any figures after any decimal. They simply don't need any. Okay, so now we created one specific measure. It took us about, think about approximately 1 minute, which is quite some time if you need to do this for if you need to repeat this for a lot of different other columns as well. We're going to repeat the same process within Tabular Editor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Tabular Editor on my local instance. Great. And this is how it looks like. This is Tabular Editor 2.14 edition. We can simply connect to any open Power BI desktop file. Any open Power BI desktop file has its own SSAS, its own analysis services instance locally open, and you can connect to this one. So we can connect to a local instance. In this case, I'm going to connect to this exact Power BI report. Okay, if you connect to your Power BI report, you can immediately see a lot of different information. It actually represents the whole of your model. Every single table, every single role, relationships, perspectives, any specific data source. All of these things are available on this specific moment. Yeah, I have the chat open now, and I can see a question from Fernando. If you use the external tools ribbon and you open it from here, then it will be automatically connected. But I just opened up a new instance locally as well. But indeed, it can connect automatically as well if you open it from the external tools ribbon. Great. If you have this open, all metadata can be viewed over here as well. So what are we going to do? We can see all of the different columns, every single measure that we've defined. In our case, the measure that we've defined is the sum of sales amount. It's this one. What are we going to do? We are going to take a look at. I'm going to delete this one because we're going to recreate it within Tabular Editor. I can save this one and it will be automatically pushed over here. So it removes our measure. Okay, great. So what are we going to do? We are going to create a new measure. So we can open up our tabular editor, create a new measure, and we can define the sum of the sales amount. In this case, the exact same definition applies. We can create a sum of, in this case, once again, we have our sales amount, and we can save this once again. Once I save it and I pushed, I use the shortcut Control S, so it automatically is applied to my Power BI report file, and it pops up over here once again. Great. It's the exact same thing, but still it takes us too much time. What can we do as well? I'm going to delete it once again. We can do it faster. We can create advanced scripts. I have some of the advanced scripts available over here. Let me quickly dive into the first one. This is how you can actually automate the interactions that you're performing within Tabular Editor. You can define those in an advanced script, and you can just call this specific function for every single measure or column or what that you exactly are willing to perform. This piece of code, it's C# like, by the way, it's going to it can be applied to a specific column, to all selected columns, and it's going to create a sum based measure. It's going to provide it with a specific format string. In this case, I've chosen for this specific format string. It's also going to hide the column itself, because we don't want people to use the actual column value. We would like to have people to use our predefined measure. Great. How does this actually work? I can simply, if I save this, you can just simply click on the plus sign, and you can save this specific piece of code, this advanced script. In this case, it should be applied to a specific column. If you did this, I already did this, of course, then you can just simply right-click on every single one of your columns. You can navigate to custom actions and create a base measure. What will this do? It will hide this column. It will create a new display folder called measures, and it will provide us with this additional measure, which has the right format string, the right name, etc. Okay, if I save this, you will automatically see within Power BI Desktop, we have the display folder measures over here, and this indeed includes the sum of sales amount, which can be easily used within our matrix. But we would like to push it a little bit further as well. We can create other advanced scripts as well. I have a very interesting one ready over here as well. For example, we can also create a year-to-date measure. A lot of reports don't only need base measures, they need to have time intelligence functions as well, such as a year-to-date, a year-over-year, a past year. All of those time intelligence functions will be you will need to reapply them for every single measure. Great. So the same principle will be in place over here. I'm going to create an year-to-date measure, and please do mind it automatically uses the date dimension that I've been using within my report. See, if you always use the same name of a date dimension, try to stick to some governance rules, try to always follow the same rules, and then you can reuse them very, very easily. Okay. So going to quickly edit apply to this one. We can create a year-to-date measure, and it's automatically created. We now have a total year-to-date. Great. If I save this, then it will be over here as well. We still have to wait a little bit, but I'm assuming that it's pushing through. Yeah, okay, over here it popped up. Great. We can push it a little bit further as well. We can create a last script. For example, in this for a specific case, I would like to create all time intelligence measures. We don't only have a year to date, we have a past year, we have a year over year, we have a year over year change, and we have quarter to date, month to date, etc. You can extend it to your own preference, of course. Great. What I'm going to do, delete those two measures now, and we're going to see how long that it will take us to create all of these measures. What we can do, we are going to first apply the base measure. It will create, based on this sales amount column, it will create a sum of sales amounts. So this is the base measure. It will also have created an display folder. Afterwards, next custom action, all intelligence functions. It automatically generates all of those functions in one click. We can save it, and afterwards those are all applied on our Power BI report. For example, we have a past year, a year over year change, and it's very easy to check that it actually represents us with the correct figures that we would like to see. Great. That is for the tabular editor part. So it's very, very useful, not only to lift your Power BI report performance, but especially your development time. You can reduce your development time significantly. Please do take into account for this specific case, you can also use calculation groups. But of course, this is just to show you guys how you can avoid iterating the same manual process for creating a specific measure. Great. Let us navigate to the presentation once again. So we've had avoiding cross directional relationships. We've also had avoiding adding all kinds of shapes and use a background for your Power BI report. And we've also discussed about how you can create base measures and how you can reduce your Power BI development time by using tabular editor. Great. Next in line, reference versus duplicate. This is a very easy one, but a lot of people tend to forget about this one. It's a very, very important one. If we navigate over to our Power BI file and we head over to the transform data part, to the Power Query, what we can see over here then is that for this specific piece, let me quickly head over to this one. I'll open up the Power Query over here. For this specific query, you will be able to, for example, I would like to have I would like to duplicate this query. You have two different options. You can duplicate or reference. There's a big difference between the two of them. Let me quickly duplicate it for once, and let me quickly reference it. If I duplicate it, you will be able to see that in Advanced Editor, it's just simply the exact same code. It's going to connect to our underlying data source once again. if you take a look at the reference one, so let me quickly call this one duplicate, and I'll call this one our reference one, just to make it very, very clear. The reference one, it references our other query. So we don't set up two different connections to our underlying system every single time over and over again. We're going to reuse the query that has been loading all data before. So a very, very important step to take. Also, if I, for example, filter on a specific product, for example, I would like to filter only on product number 1, in the duplicate query, it won't be applied because it was a one-time copy from that specific moment. For the reference one, it keeps into account, it bases itself on the DIM product. It don't uses the underlying data system anymore. It will base itself on the DIM product. So the same filter is also pushed through the reference query. Very important to limit the number of underlying of queries which are pushed to your underlying data system. Okay. Bookmarks, they can be very, very useful. Bookmarks, what I can advise you guys, please don't use them. There are specific situations in which you can use them, but I would literally advise you guys to create separate tabs in the same report or use dynamic measuring by using, for example, a switch function in DUX. Updating bookmarks is really, really a pain in the ass if you need to, especially if you have a lot of different bookmarks. It takes you a lot of time, and it will save you some frustrations afterwards if you just simply avoid bookmarks and create separate tabs in the same report. Data modeling is a very important part as well, especially if we take a look at the Power BI performance. This won't be I won't be going into detail because we can literally give a full session on data modeling on its own. But what I try to advise is every single time try to stick to Kimball's dimensional modeling. Yeah, this is actually dividing your data model into two different pieces, which are mainly dimensions and facts. Two big benefits that you are trying to strive for: one, optimize for query performance, and the other one is that you don't have or you have way less data redundancy. Great. Won't dive into this one, but this is a very important topic as well. Next in line, mind your date tables. Okay, let us navigate once again to our report. Voila. Let me also close off the Power Query. I won't be applying any changes. Thank you. Okay, for the date dimension, very, very important topic as well. What can you see in this specific data model? If we take a look at all different dates, you can see that within this specific case, it doesn't provide you with any auto date time. Why is this the case? This is only the case because I disabled the auto date time function. If you head over to your options of your Power BI file and you navigate to the current file data load, you have the option over here of time intelligence to enable or disable auto date time. What does this do? If you by default it's like this, it's checked. By default it will provide you with an automatic date time table under the hood. You won't be able to see it, but for every single date field that you have within your data model, for example, the birth date, for example, the end date, start date, due date, all kinds of dates will have their own date table attached. It will, Power BI actually will provide you with this under the hood, but I can only advise you guys try to disable this one. Let me quickly enable it. So by default it's enabled, so it's like this, and you have this this pre-aggregated and predefined date hierarchy that is ready for you, but it's defined for every single date within your whole model. Okay, let me quickly show you guys why you should you should actually disable this. A tool that I actually like to use as well is Duck Studio. Duck Studio is also an open source tool. Let me quickly open it up. Voila. It's also open source. It's created by SQL BI, consultancy firm, and I actually quite like it, especially for Power BI performance and writing my DAX measures to lift the performance of my DAX measures. What can we do? We can set up a connection to our Power BI file. It delivers us with the same data model with all of the tables, just like we could see in Tabular Editor as well. But what can we see here as well? We can see here all of these local date tables. And those local date tables, if we navigate back to the report, we simply can't see them in the data model. They aren't available over here. So they're created under the hood, behind the scenes. If, for example, we can navigate to the advanced ribbon and we can view the metrics. What will this do? It will make use of the Vertipec engine, so the engine that Power BI is built upon, and it will provide you with a very neat view. It's very, very useful to take a look at what columns actually take up the most space within my data model. What I tend to do in most cases is I would like to have an overview of all of the most resource consuming tables, and you don't only have it per table, you also can have it split up per column. If you take a look at this one, you can actually see that in this specific case, the third most consuming, in speaking of data size, it's the email address. So it's about 9% of your whole model is size that is spent to only one column. So please, if you don't use this column, simply don't load it into your Power BI data model. It will reduce your model size with about 9%, which is already huge. And especially if you're working with large amounts of data, then you will be very happy to exclude this in your reporting if you simply don't use it for any report use case. It also includes all of the relationships, the partitions with the cardinality of every single table. But what I would like to draw your attention to is the summary. You can actually see for this specific case, we have a total size of about 9.6 megabytes. Okay, it exists of 15 tables, about 200 columns. Let me navigate once again to the options. And what are we going to do now? We're going to change the behavior. We don't want any, and let me, for the convenience of you guys, I'll open up you can see the birth date over here, and we will change the behavior. We will disable the auto date time and take a look at the birth date, for example. Voila. It's simply seen as a value. There isn't any date table that is being generated behind the scenes now. Okay, let me quickly save. I don't need this one. Voila. What we can do now, be heading over back to Duck Studio. All of the under the hood created date tables, they simply disappeared. We only have on those tables in place over here. If you refresh our metrics, we can see that the model is about, it's about 30% less big, it's 30% smaller than before. So that's a huge difference simply by disabling this this option. So please do take into account, try to disable it at all time. Great. I see that we have about 15 a little bit more than 10 minutes left on the clock. So I'm going to move a little bit forward. Okay, next in line, split granularity to a lower cardinality. Power BI relies upon the Vertipec engine, like I explained before. This is storing data in columnar format. So it doesn't really care about you importing 100k lines or 1 million records. It doesn't really care about that one, but it actually cares a lot on the distinct values, so the cardinality of your data that you're trying to load in. If you have a lot of distinct values within a specific column, Power BI will spend more resources, it will have a harder time than if you would, for example, load in 1 million additional records. So please do take this into account. Should you split date time values? Um, if you only are reporting upon dates and you don't need the time part, please exclude it in your reports, because it lowers the cardinality significantly, of course. Okay, then for the second part, we just discussed all of the report best practices. For the second part, we will be taking a look at how you can resolve your slow dataset refreshes yourself. Earlier, we talked about the query. You can use reference or duplicate. Also, I would like to explain the enable load and the include in report refresh options. If you right click on a specific query, you have this option available over there as well. Unchecking the enable load, then you simply won't be loading any data whatsoever in your memory. Very, very important. It's very useful to have intermediate queries, but you simply won't see it popping up in your data model within your Power BI report view. On the other hand side, we have unchecking the including report refresh. If you do this, data simply won't be refreshed. It's very useful for static data, but you will be able to see it within your Power BI data model, but data won't simply be refreshed. Very important to take into account the difference of the both of them. Very easy to do. Once you publish a lot of your Power BI reports to the Power BI service, try to spread your concurrent dataset refreshes. Try to spread those scheduled refreshes. Will save up some of your resources, especially if you're not on premium or you're not on the Gen 2 of premium. Especially then, it's very, very important to spread your dataset refresh schedules as much as possible. Great. Once you publish a specific report, try to reuse Power BI datasets that have been created before you. If you reuse them, then you simply don't need to refresh them. You don't need any additional resources, and you can just simply reuse it. Try to do this. It's also a governance best practice, of course, to use shared datasets. So try to take this into account. Data restrictions, very interesting one as well. Let me quickly show you guys how this actually comes into play. If we head over to our demo environment, we have, for example, our dim product. If we take a look at, in this case, the navigation step, we always have the option to view native query. This option is available for most sources, not for all sources. For all SQL sources, it's available. For example, as SAP HANA, it's all available. If you need a full list, you can for sure navigate to the Microsoft document pages, but it is available over here. And this is actually the query that Power BI is launching towards your underlying data system. In this case, it's an Azure SQL database. Try to, if you, for example, add a filter on this one, you will see that the native query will be adjusted. And this is a very important one, because it won't send the query, it won't send this query of the navigation step, which is asking for the full dim product table. No, the query that it will be launching is the one over here. It will request the full dim product, but only where the product key is 1. So the filter is actually pushed towards your underlying data system. Very, very important to be aware of query folding of your queries. So for example, if you would like to, if you implement an index or a group by, in some cases it may break your query folding and filters simply won't be pushed through. So try to be aware of this one. Okay. Navigating back to our presentation. You can also reduce your dataset refresh times by making use of the incremental refresh, data modeling techniques, or managed aggregations. Quite new feature is the hybrid tables. I believe it's still on premium only, but it's a very interesting feature. It actually combines best of both worlds in terms of data freshness and performance. You can combine import with direct query at the same time within the same table by making use of hybrid tables. This can lift your performance of your dataset refreshes significantly. Okay, as the last part, evaluating the performance. I already showed you guys most of these tools. Tabular editor we already saw. We also saw DAX Studio. Next, we also have the SSMS, the good old SSMS profiler, which isn't, in my opinion, it's not advisable to use that one. I always try to stick to Tabular editor and DAX Studio in most cases. But what is very important to know what the performance analyzer is all about. If we, for example, take a look at our demo environment once again, you can enable in the view ribbon the performance analyzer. And what you can do is you can, for example, let us create a table for this one. What you can do is you can enable it. You can start recording. And if we, for example, filter our page on a specific category, it will launch all of these queries. And what is very interesting to know, you also have the query that is being launched, the DAX query that is being created over here as well. Something that I often do is, especially in performance tuning for your DAX measures, always start from this one and try to copy this query and launch it into DAX Studio and start lifting the performance from there, because you can see every single query that is being executed and the result that it is returning in DAX Studio as well. It takes up, it shows you an overview of how long it takes for the DAX query to be executed, how long it takes for the visual to be rendered, and if there are any other, the other part is actually how long it actually needs to wait for another visual to render. So it provides you with a very neat set of how long it takes for a visual to render. Great. Last but not least, this is the last part of the presentation. This is the best practice analyzer. I actually really like to use it. You can also use it by making use of Tabular Editor. This is our Tabular Editor instance. And what we can do is you can import best practice rules. It's very neatly defined in a blog being created by Michael Kowalski from Microsoft last year. It's very neatly described over there how you can implement it. And it actually provides you with a basic set of rules that your data model needs to comply to. For example, in this one, this is a predefined set. You can also add your own rules, by the way. You can, for example, hide specific foreign keys. We can see that this simply isn't the case. It actually violates this specific rule for all of these keys, and you can actually push it automatically towards your data model. You can immediately apply the fix, and it will hide your key within your Power BI file immediately. So this is a very useful set of best practice rules on which you can test your data model every single time over and over again. Great. This is the end of my presentation. Try to stay on top of your Power BI game. Power BI updates on a monthly basis. The February release has been released, I think it was only 2 days ago. Try to always install the latest version. You can use new features, bug fixes, etc. It's more performant, better visuals, and you just stay on top of your Power BI game, and you can use the earliest features very early. If you would like to read about all of the tips that I just gave you guys, you can also take a look at the blog that I've written on our company website, which is on the screen over here, and you can read all about it over there. Okay, we've reached our destination. We've turned our slow steam locomotive into a high-speed train. Yeah, I would just like to thank you guys for all of the attention. And if there are any questions, make sure to unmute and ask them, or put them in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer them. If there aren't any questions, make sure to connect on Twitter or LinkedIn. I try to be very active on those ones, and would be happy to see you over there.